Here's something that should terrify you. The company's building the most powerful technology in human history, technology that will reshape how we work, think, communicate, and even understand ourselves. Those companies have made a calculated decision. They've decided that getting to market first matters more than getting it right. And the people who are supposed to be asking the hard questions? The ethicists, the governance professionals, the people trained to think about consequences? They're either not being hired, being ignored, or being shown the door the moment they become inconvenient. I'm going to tell you exactly why AI ethics are missing from corporate America, and why that's not an accident. It's a choice. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that everyone in Silicon Valley knows, but few will say out loud. The AI arms race has no finish line, and ethics are viewed as friction. When OpenAI released ChatGPT in November 2022, it triggered something unprecedented. Every major tech company, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, went into panic mode. Internal memos leaked, timelines got compressed, products that weren't ready got pushed out the door. Google rushed Bard to market and watched it hallucinate false information in its launch demo. Microsoft integrated AI into Bing and had to pull back features after the chatbot started threatening users. But here's what matters: none of them slowed down. The lesson they took wasn't, "We need to be more careful." The lesson was, "We need to be faster." This isn't a bug in corporate thinking, it's a feature. In venture capital and public markets, first mover advantage is gospel. The company that captures market share early builds network effects, locks in customers, and establishes the standard everyone else has to follow. Being second means being irrelevant. So, what gets sacrificed? Everything that takes time. Careful testing, red teaming for misuse, thinking through second and third order consequences, understanding how your technology will affect real human beings. Ethics require patience. Corporate incentives punish patience. This is the fundamental structural problem, and until we name it clearly, we can't address it. The market rewards speed. Speed is incompatible with wisdom, and wisdom is exactly what we need when we're building technology this powerful. Now let's talk about who's actually in the room when these decisions get made. If you look at how tech companies have staffed up for the AI boom, you'll see massive investments in machine learning engineers, data scientists, and product managers. You'll see billions going into compute infrastructure and training runs. What you won't see is proportional investment in the people whose job is to ask, should we build this? And if we do, how do we build it responsibly? This is the governance gap. Most major AI companies have ethics teams that are laughably understaffed relative to the scale of what they're building. We're talking about products deployed to billions of users being reviewed by teams of a few dozen people, if that. And those teams often lack real authority. They can write reports, they can raise concerns, but they can't stop a product launch. They can't override business decisions. When Microsoft laid off its entire ethics and society team in 2023, right as it was integrating AI across its product suite, that told you everything you need to know about corporate priorities. But here's what makes this even worse. The people companies need for responsible AI governance are expensive, hard to find, and require a rare combination of skills. You need people who understand machine learning deeply enough to evaluate technical systems. You need lawyers who understand the regulatory landscape, HIPAA, the EU AI Act, state privacy laws, sector-specific requirements. You need ethicists who can think rigorously about values and consequences. And you need all of those capabilities working together. That's a significant investment. And most companies aren't making it. What they're doing instead is treating AI governance as a compliance checkbox. Hire a small team, write some policies, put out a press release about responsible AI principles, and move on. The appearance of ethics without the substance. And when that small team raises concerns that might slow down a product launch or require expensive changes, suddenly their budget gets cut, their recommendations get ignored, or they get managed out entirely. The reporting backs this up. Investigative journalism from outlets like MIT Technology Review, Wired, and the New York Times has documented this pattern across the industry. Former ethics team members at Google, Meta, and other companies have gone public with exactly these complaints. So we have a speed imperative that punishes careful thinking. We have underinvestment in the people who could provide oversight. But there's a third piece that makes this all possible. Nobody is being held accountable. Think about this. When a pharmaceutical company releases a drug that harms people, there are consequences. The FDA can pull approvals. Executives can face criminal charges. Shareholders sue. The company's market value craters. When an AI system causes harm, discriminates in hiring, generates dangerous misinformation, enables fraud at scale, what happens? Usually nothing. Maybe some bad press for a news cycle. Maybe a congressional hearing where executives give vague answers and nothing changes. The regulatory frameworks that would create real accountability don't exist yet, or they're not being enforced. This creates a moral hazard. Companies can externalize the costs of their recklessness onto society. The profits from moving fast stay with shareholders. The harms from moving fast get distributed across millions of users, workers, and communities who have no recourse. Corporate boards understand risk. They manage risk constantly. Financial risk, operational risk, regulatory risk. But they only manage risks that have consequences attached. Without real accountability for AI harms, there's no rational business case for investing heavily in prevention. Look at the heavily regulated sectors: healthcare, financial services, critical infrastructure. Organizations in those industries take compliance seriously because the consequences for failure are severe and immediate. Fines, license revocations, personal liability for executives. But AI development has been happening largely outside those structures. Companies operating in regulatory gray zones move fast and hope for the best. The incentives are broken, and broken incentives produce broken outcomes. So where does this leave us? I want to be clear, I'm not anti-technology. I'm not suggesting we stop developing AI. The technology is here, and it will continue to advance regardless of what any individual company does. But the current trajectory is not sustainable. We're building transformative systems without the institutional capacity to govern them well. That's a recipe for catastrophe. Here's what needs to change. First, we need regulatory frameworks with teeth. The EU is ahead of us here with the AI Act. In the US, we're still relying on a patchwork of state laws and voluntary commitments. We need federal legislation that creates real requirements and real consequences for companies that deploy AI irresponsibly. Second, companies need to invest in governance infrastructure that matches the scale of their AI ambitions. That means larger ethics and compliance teams with genuine authority. That means diverse perspectives, not just technologists, but lawyers, ethicists, social scientists, and people from affected communities. And it means governance that's integrated into the development process from the beginning, not bolted on at the end. Third, we need market pressure. Consumers, enterprise customers, and investors need to start demanding evidence of responsible AI practices. Certifications, audits, transparency reports. The mechanisms exist, but they need to become standard expectations rather than nice-to-haves. And finally, we need cultural change within these organizations. Building transformative technology is a moral responsibility, not just a business opportunity. The engineers and executives making these decisions need to internalize that their choices have consequences, measured in human lives and human dignity. Here's the bottom line. AI ethics aren't missing because the problems are too hard or the technology is moving too fast. They're missing because companies have decided they're too expensive and too inconvenient. That's a choice, and choices can be changed. But they'll only change when we stop accepting excuses and start demanding accountability. When we recognize that move fast and break things is not a philosophy, it's an abdication of responsibility. The question isn't whether we can build AI responsibly. The question is whether we have the will to insist on it. I know where I stand. Now it's your turn to decide. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more on AI ethics, technology governance, and what's really happening behind corporate AI development. And check out my book, Spiritual Zombie Apocalypse, where I go deeper into how these technologies are reshaping what it means to be human.